open. Just let me know when it's live because it doesn't say anything for me.
It's live.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Orphans of Abraham. Oh, we
Sorry.
had we had a little bit of a feedback there. Everything all right?
Yeah, I was trying to do the give an applause.
Oh,
So
okay. You
popular
were
and
trolling me. It doesn't come through. It comes in through as
oh,
a big baby. No, it's all right. It's all good. It's all in the spirit of the hangout, and that's exactly type of people we here on every Thursday night. We just lay back. We're cool cats. We'll take it easy. We're not, as the Christians would say, we're not Pharisees. We're not going to stone you for speaking out or having a weird opinion or having a different opinion or having a different, take on things. Whether you're Hebrew roots or whether you're a gear. It doesn't matter. Just as long as you talk Torah, we dig it. And that's what we do every Thursday night here on the Orphans of Abraham, hosted by James the Idol Smasher at yahoo.com. So, oh, wait, that's not the email address. It's James, and then the email address is the Idol Smasher at yahoo.com. So, any hate mail that you want to send, you can send to James. um, so, what's the topic of this week, James? What are we, just us two schmoozing?
well, of course we've got Emor, the Parsha, which is it's like a lot of the latter part of Leviticus. It's just chock full of subjects. It goes from one subject to another quickly, and so
And Emor is Hebrew for what?
uh,
Speak softly. The word means to speak in a soft and gentle tone.
this is chapter 21 of Leviticus. If you're following along at home, and might even get to a Haftorah later on, and we're getting to the end of Leviticus. But so there's that. Also, of course, what's in the news in the States anyway is we've got a couple of I would consider dangerous Congress critters. One of them being that Rashida Tlaib, who doubled down on Seth Meyers' show. I guess that's the Late Show or whatever, Late Show or something like that.
Out of there, all garbage nowadays.
It's like, I don't think anybody's really gotten the Palestinian perspective in the media. Thanks for coming on. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? This woman, for those of you who don't know, claims that she finds pride and what she calls a warm feeling inside because her ancestors, the Palestinians, created a safe haven for Jews during the Holocaust. And every media outlet, leaders of the Democrat Party, and a lot of ignorant people believe her. She's telling a bold-faced lie. There were plenty of scuffles that started when Hitler came to power. In 1936, he made a deal with a guy named Husseini, and they shook hands and decided they were going to be allies. This is about the same time that Great Britain, the King of England, and Winston Churchill, and even FDR had shaken hands on aggression treaties with the Nazis, vowing to never let Jews in their while we're doing this thing here we're doing in Germany, you can't let any Jews into your country. That included the British, which included Palestine, Jewish Palestine. In 1939, they created something called a white paper. There were 4. This is the last one, where they limited all. They limited the amount of Jews that could enter into Israel down to 75,000 over a period of 3 years. This decision cost millions because they couldn't go to America, and they tried. We kicked 30,000 of them away. They couldn't go to any European country because Hitler was knocking them over. The Brits, who controlled Palestine at the time, thought it was their colony, weren't going to let the Jews into what they called the national home for the Jews. And Tlaib's going to sit here and tell me and the rest of America that she gets a warm feeling knowing the Palestinians helped create a safe haven for Jews during the Holocaust? Fuck her. It's Horrible. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's a bold-faced friggin' lie. And the media, all freaking 3 networks. I don't know if Fox has really gone after her on this one. I think they're just kind of staying out of it. But you can guarantee CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, all crying crocodile tears, and what a wonderful thing she's come out and said, even though she's lying to you. And I really don't think half the journalists in America even know. They don't care. That most journalists in America today that aren't local, like your local news, are most likely going to be cretins who want nothing more than to push an agenda and use what facts push that agenda in their news. They're not going to tell you this. They want you to tell you that the state of Israel was created in 1948, not there's a Jewish Palestine in 1922. They're going to tell you that, you know, the Israelis bombed innocent civilians after a skirmish with Gaza or some shit. It's always something. And this has got to be the most bold-faced, in your face, drop kick it out of the park. You can't look any other ways about it. A bold-faced lie to the American people on a woman who's on the taxpayer dime representing people in the States. Bad news. So I would like to, especially if we get more people in here who might be more knowledgeable than I, because I've been reading up and studying a lot in the past week about this situation and the history of the region, the real history of the region, the whole thing, not just the cherry picked bits they go on, none of the cherry picked bits they use to push a narrative.
Fake news.
So that I would like to discuss a bit of that. And when Gav was in here a couple of weeks ago, the topic was something along the lines of outreach versus defense, and he was saying outreach is defense. And we don't get 1,000 views a week, and I'm so thankful we get the views we do, and I'm glad you're watching. Thank you for tuning in. But do some history. White paper of 1939, British mandate of 1922. Excuse me, the mandate for Palestine 1922. Do some history, because what you're going to get out of CNBC or MSNBC, I should say, CNN, ABC, NBC, and CBS will be bold-faced lies about what's going on over there and why things are going on over there. So I would suggest do some research. It'll be worth your time, and you're going to be like, holy crap, we're being lied to. It's that bold, blatant, in your face. Established historical fact nobody denies. Nobody denies the white paper. Nobody denies Husseini. Nobody denies Hitler is shaking hands with FDR and the King of England. Nobody denies that stuff. This is real, honest to goodness. There was a civil war in Palestine, Jewish Palestine. They partitioned it, gave 75% or 78% to the Arabs and the other rest of the Jews, and that still wasn't enough. They created campaigns in the 60s, especially. They started a full-on campaign, and everybody gave up the ghost, but a few people that Iran seems to like. Everybody else really doesn't care that much. Lebanon's got some issues, some big problems. That's going to be settled soon if it's not already. I don't think that's going to be as much. I mean, not like Iran being the problem. How would Gazans get those weapons? How would Gazans get massive amounts of weapons? Where did they get them from? We didn't sell it to them, and we'll sell it to just about anybody. Where do they get all this stuff to fire? Obviously, we know exactly where it's going, and it's Iran. But do some history and look some stuff up. It's good for you as a citizen. If you're not American and you're watching this, you might have a more tuned in look at history than we do in America. I know that in America, we've ever since the 60s, they've done everything they can to wipe out civics and history in schools here. They don't want kids to know what's going on in the world. If you don't know about this, once again, British Mandate for Palestine, 1922, ratified by the United Nations. You can go online and look it up. Also, the white papers, the mandate white papers for Palestine. They were 4, particularly when we're looking at Rashida Tlaib and her claims and all the sycophantic support she gets from the media. You want to look at the white paper of 1939. Let you know just how unhospitable the so-called Palestinians, at the time they were just Arab Muslims, were to the Jewish people and to the Jewish people in Palestine, and what negatively little they did. I mean, so little it was below zero. They did to create a safe haven for anybody. So that's the other topic. That's kind of where my head is at. I'm absolutely dumbfounded. You'll hear, I mean, I tell you here, there's a rise of anti-Semitism in America. You're in New York. You know what that's about. You know what's happened there. It's happened out in Australia. They're just they're shooting up everything, but particularly the synagogue shootings here in the States. It's not anything really new. It's just a resurgence. I think what's new is the bold-faced bullshit they're feeding the American public. This is like a wounded animal lashing out. This is their last-ditch effort, where they're literally contradicting established world history to sucker you into believing that the Jews are the problem. That's what it's all about. Don't even begin to think. This is all about proving to you the Jews are bad. And when you start giving established history, I've noticed in a lot of forums and social media too, you start giving the facts, and then it turns around to look at all the bad stuff the Jews have done, and they'll take a picture, a freeze frame, and go on about it for paragraphs. They will boldface tell you, they have like WordPad documents on their desktop ready, and they'll give me a 17-paragraph rant about some bullshit. And they'll post it, and they don't know what they're talking about. They don't care. They just want to get a false narrative out there. And on this note, when you bring up the Holocaust, a systematic extermination of people like no one had ever seen before or since, hell, even Stalin couldn't do it like Hitler did. And he quintupled Hitler's numbers. I mean, I fear for the kids, who are people my age and older. Nobody listens to us anyway. But I fear the kids. I fear the young people and suckers, and they're going to believe this, and they're going to carry it with them. And they're going to believe it. And anytime they enter into a situation where they would be forced to, make a stand or have a statement, they're going to tell their friends, they're going to express exactly what they've been told in the media. And then we get to the universities and colleges in the States. The professors are only going to back it up. They don't care if they're lying. People who lie this boldly and don't the reason why nobody wants to believe Rashida is apparently because we're racists. We don't believe what she's saying. If we critique what she's saying, if we point out we're racist, that's what she said on Seth Meyers. Somebody else also praised her for coming out and telling us the Palestinian side because the media never does. Colin somebody or other. I forgot his name. So, shalom, Aaron. I'm going off on the I'm going off on stuff. How you doing tonight?
Doing well. How's everything here?
I'm great. John, how you doing? I think John's great too.
I'm doing all right. The thing is, there's a lot of Democrats that are just willing. I mean, they're just absolutely dog shit crazy. There's another one, some Asian Yang. He's Wing Wang Wang. I don't know his name. He's running for president, but he's another Jew hater himself, and he's a big anti-circumcision guy. You heard about this guy, Wing Wang? Don't touch his wing. Circumcise his wing.
I know Liu, who's a real far left extremist liar.
Is that his name? Wu?
I think there's Liu. I think his name's Liu.
Well, the one that's running for president. There's an Asian man. He's running for president, and he's a big proponent of this anti-circumcision. But it's not just here. I mean, everywhere. I mean, Europe. I mean, all across Europe, the left is coming out a lot against Jews. I mean, just any sort of way they can sort of get the Jew without actually the Jew themselves. They do it. Like a lot of them are anti-kosher. Like a lot of laws are going through in Europe, but getting rid of kosher slaughter, practice of kosher, circumcision, and and just subtle ways of. I think this is much more dangerous. That piece of garbage that runs her mouth on the news about safe havens in Palestine. I could care less about her. Flush it on the toilet. The turd she is. But a lot of these other people are very subtle, and I think it's a lot more dangerous because they're trying to destroy us culturally, and they're not. You get what I'm trying to say, James.
Yep.
I'm tired, so I don't
Yep.
know.
No, you're perfect.
So I think this is even dangerous. I mean, of course, I mean, it's not nothing new. Europe is just a disgusting place in general, anyway. But a lot of hate going around, and it's not right. I mean, I don't understand necessarily the issues. I wasn't there. I don't know whether or not it was a safe haven, James. You know what I mean. I can only go by what I know. What our history says.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but it is what it is, and how does she get elected in the Congress? Who knows? I don't know who's voting. I guess it's all those dead people on the registers.
Well, see, so we got kicked out of a hangout a couple of months ago. You and I did.
Oh yeah,
And we had a couple of European folks. I think one was from Germany. The other might have been Scottish. I think, yeah, we had a Gaelic in here. And they were almost angry. I know it wasn't personal to me or to us, but they were angry. What makes you think circumcision's better? I said, well, and I said that I made the comments of, well, the ladies dig it. And that was the wrong thing to say. And they were angry about it. They were angry at us for having for being circumcised, for the sake of, whatever we do it for whatever the reason we do it here. That blew me away to no end. How really worked up these guys were, almost as if it was like a feminist over here. They were very, very upset. They felt they had been cheated or something. I was blown away. I didn't know that anybody thought that way about it.
That settlement is actually spilling over into United States politics. I mean, a lot of this like attitudes in Europe is becoming mainstream here in the States. I never would have thought that these types of policies would be. I mean, we're talking about Democrats. We're talking about the presidential candidates, James. This is what's scary. Legitimate candidates for the presidency who have deep-rooted anti-Semitism.
I think if people knew. Oh, Carla, shalom, and Rosalie.
Hello.
Shalom.
Hi.
What do you got? 2 more weeks in Facebook jail?
You check
Huh?
till the 5th.
Till the 5th, good grief.
Yeah, pretty much till the 5th.
You're missed. You know that. Nobody puts bad jokes on my wall like you do.
I
Like
have
the groaners,
been, yeah, I've been sending you
Just another
emails to James, so you for the orphans.
I'm sorry. I
So
haven't
you
looked
might
in there.
want
I will.
Just using a second Facebook account. That's what Rabbi Kotsanov does. When he gets banned on his main account, he uses his backup.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Oh,
Next month, I've got a new phone coming, and next month I'll have a new phone, so I'll do that so I can. So I'm actually waking up and coming into the 2000 teens. No more flip phone.
all right. I gave up mine last year for the first time. I finally broke down and got a smartphone. Wasn't even my choice.
Huh?
Bought it for me, and that was the end of it. Carla, how you doing, my lady?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm just peachy.
Good.
Just peachy. We're talking about one of my biggest concerns are the suckers, and we have plenty of them who will believe anything they hear and they've been told, and that's not good news for Jews in a lot of ways. because the stuff that's out there.
So one of the things I find kind of interesting, or at least I get some hope out of this, is the kids that are 15 to 20 years old right now, they don't believe anything. You tell them something and they'll pull their phone out and they're Googling it, and then they're going to check 6 different places. They don't believe anything that's said to them. So I think that a lot of this stuff is even though this liberal, far left, is probably better, statement, that this far left push is going on. I think what it's doing is it's causing the younger generation that doesn't know the history so much to say, you know what, I'm not going to trust you and I'm not going to trust you. And then the facts start coming out. And I think this whole thing is going to backfire. At least I hope it's going to backfire on them, where we're going to have this generation that's following up the millennials, and they are going to be rational, fact-based, and all of this stuff is just going to go away because it's false. You can only lie about things for so long before enough people are like, no, that never happened. Palestine was not a safe haven. Israel was promised to the Jewish people before the Holocaust even started. So the whole argument of, all that whole argument that these people try to make, whether it's Palestine or whether it's, transgender issues, or whether it's, all of these things, they're trying to change the narrative. And the young generation, at least, my son's 15 years old, and some of the kids that are around his age and some of the other parents that I talk to, you can't just tell your kids, oh, reading in the dark is bad, because 5 minutes later they're going to be like, well, no, it's not. There's a article right here from the Science Journal, and then there's another one over here from another Science Journal that all say that is a false information, and here's the study. And so my hope is that this technology advance and the information advance is what we're seeing is we're seeing this group of people that are afraid that their lies are going to be found out. So they are just piling it on as deep and as quickly as they can. Like a child, when did you hit your brother? Well, no, because what happened was, and then they give you this big long story and they make up all kinds of other stuff to try to get out of the original lie. And I feel that that's where we're at. At least I hope that's where we're at.
We covered this in Kabbalah class tonight, James. If you can get it, it's pretty interesting.
What happened?
Huh? We covered this issue. Well, one of the things is that oh shoot, I can't. There was so much that's covered, and I'm trying to remember. He went over the book of Daniel, and he covered this. Whereas the more anti-Semites, God's making that happen, so the Jew goes home. Because they're in exile. In order to get them out of exile to go home, you got to make exile feel bad and not comfortable anymore.
Nice.
And that also includes us Gering people too. Us Ger and Nochri's people.
I guess we lost John.
It's part of Messiah ben David. It's really good how we pieced it together. It was really, really informative.
Nice. Well, I'm a full-on proponent of Jews going home.
Mm-hmm.
Full proponent. Yeah. I'm back in it. Get Soul Strong.
Yay!
I don't know if I'll be able to attend anything because I work when a lot of the lessons are covered, but yeah, at least I can catch up on it.
Right.
That's cool.
Right.
And Ger was one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight. Gosh, I wish John was here. I hope I didn't talk him out of,
No, he was breaking up and causing everybody else to break up too. Excuse me. I have a slight throat tickle thingy going on with the allergies and everything, so I'll be probably running it's in the minor sore throat until the ibuprofen kicks in. But no, he was having because when I came in, I was breaking up and everybody else was breaking up too. So I figured, well, I'll boot out and then I'll come back. And I couldn't reboot, so I had to close out and then come back. And then Aaron was still breaking up, and then John fell out, and now nobody's breaking up. So,
Oh, John's fault. I see.
that's right. No. I'm just saying, yeah.
Okay, let's just get into something I was interested in here, and I guess this might be for posterity for some. It might be a review for others. It's Leviticus. We're in 22, I believe. I'm not sure. I know what I'm
About
doing.
the Torah portion?
Yeah, or for in the Torah portion, in more.
Yeah, I sent that to you to post in the Hangout too.
Okay.
Oh, ouch. Let's see.
Let me see what verse this is. We're looking at verse 17, I think, in 22.
Hold on, I'll have it in a minute. Oops.
There it is. Okay, I want to read first.
Leviticus 21.
I want to read first out of Stone a couple of lines, and then I'm going to go over here to my Gutnick, and then you know what? I just might have to go over here to my trusty Hertz edition Chumash and see how it reads there as well. This is in the subject of today's discussion.
I just posted the link to kabod.org on the side chat if anybody wants to look on there. And if they want commentary, you can get commentary and bring it up on their own.
Okay, first here goes. Hashem spoke to Moses, speak to Aaron and to his sons, and tell all the children of Israel, and say to them, any man of the house of Israel and of the proselytes among Israel, who will bring his offering for any of their vows or their freewill offerings, they will bring to Hashem an elevated offering to be favorable for you. Okay.
Are you in 22?
Huh?
You're in 22. Okay, never mind.
22:17.
22, you got it.
Now I'm going to read it out of the, which I haven't proofread, but we'll look it out of the good old trusty Hertz edition here. And it says, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron and to his sons and to all the children of Israel, and say to them, whoever he be to the house of Israel or to the strangers in Israel that bringeth his offering, whether it be any of their vows or any of their freewill offerings, which are brought to the Lord for a burnt offering, they may be accepted. You shall offer a male without blemish, yada, yada. Okay. Now we'll go over here to the stone or the Gutnick. Now this is what's interesting is the Gutnick. I'm saving the Gutnick for last.
Yay.
God spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to Aaron and his sons and to all the children of Israel, and say to them, if any man from the house of Israel or from the Jewish converts, parentheses, or non-Jews, brings his offering to fulfill one of the vows or one of his pledges, he may be promised to offer up to God a burnt offering. Okay. The point I'm trying to make here is we have two distinct people in this particular verse. Any man from the house of Israel or from the Jewish converts or non-Jews. Or non-Jews is in parentheses. In the Hertz edition, we just proselyte. And in the Stone edition, they were proselytes as well. So proselytes, strangers within Israel.
Okay. My version says any man whatsoever from the house of Israel or from the strangers among Israel who offers up a sacrifice for any of their donations, that they may offer up to the Lord as a burnt offering to be favorable to you. Blah, blah, blah.
So we have any man from the house of Israel. We know who that is straight up. All right. That's
right.
12 tribes of Israel, right? And then we have three different takes. We have the stranger among Israel, proselyte, which I guess is a convert. There's not really a great explanation of what a proselyte is either. Well, we say convert. The other one says, and the great thing is, and this is, and we wouldn't expect this from a Gutnik, from a Chabad, translation. The Jewish converts, parentheses, or non-Jews, close parentheses, or non-Jews. Now, wait a second here. A stranger in Israel obviously would be a non-Jew. A proselyte is a Jew. What do Jews call proselytes? Jews. And the other one, Jewish converts or non-Jews. Out of the three of those, I'm giving the Ger prize this week in the Orphans of Avraham to the Gutnik edition Chumash, because that's the closest thing to the truth you're going to get in this particular verse. What's the word, guys? We all know the word. What's the word? What's the word in Hebrew that actually shows up? What's the... Okay. Oh, well, then, what's the point, right? I mean, I could sit here and keep breaking up, and y'all don't hear me, do you? Do you hear anything I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then there you go. I'm not breaking up. Good. What's the word?
Ger.
What's the word? That's the word right there. Ger. It's a stranger to some, a convert to one, a stranger to another, and a Jew convert or non-Jew to others. And that's why I give this week's Orphans of Avraham Ger Award to the Gutnik edition Chumash, because it covers what a Ger means better than the others in this particular verse.
Yay.
Yay, right? I mean, the Ger are not Jewish. And anybody who tells you a Ger is a Jew is dead wrong. The Ger mentioned in Torah about Passover. When the Ger gets circumcised and dunked, he's no longer a Ger. He's a Jew. He's not a Ger.
He's a Jew.
Not a Ger. Yeah, he's a Ger. If he's circumcised, yeah, but if otherwise, no. The Ger is not a Jew. How do we know? Because the Ger eats nevela. God doesn't use two different terms for you will be Gerim in Israel with me, and you give nevela to the Gerim, sell it to the Nochri. They are two different, they're not I mean, there's then the Ger Tzaddik, which we refer to as like, then that's not biblical. The Bible doesn't have Ger Toshav and doesn't have Ger Tzaddik or the Ger Hagor, maybe somewhere, but not in Torah. It's why would God say give your nevela to a Gentile or to a Ger and sell it to a Nochri if a Ger is a Jew, if a Ger is a convert? You know what I mean? Go ahead.
It's a contextual word, though. This is the problem that that I have with some people that are pushing some of this stuff out here. Is it is a contextual word, so it can mean a straight up convert, and it can mean a straight up just stranger in a land. It can mean a idolater. It can mean, it's an ambiguous word that requires further definition. And like the Gutnik that you're talking out, I mean, even Ezra, Rashi talks about the non-Jew bringing his, vow or his free will offering in relation to this verse. And the Ibn Ezra speaks about it, and the Hizkuni speaks about it as well, about, why is this stated out, and how does Rashi learn from here? And there is a difference between, like this idea that a Ger is a Jew 100% is not true, because a Ger, a convert, cannot marry certain people. So even though he is a Jew, he still can't marry certain people within the Jewish people. So he's not fully Jewish. So it's an ambiguous term.
That's not true, because the Levites can't. The Levites have the same things on them too. They have restrictions too. So it's because they can't marry Levites to have restrictions on them.
I'm not following you. What you're saying. Like what restrictions are you talking about?
The Levites are the priests. They can't marry a convert. They can't marry a woman who's been divorced. They have to marry a virgin.
Right.
There's certain things that
The Cohen that can't marry them.
Yeah, only the Cohen.
Yeah, Levites and Cohens seem to be.
But the Levites,
Go ahead.
the Levites are not the same as the Cohen as far as marriage goes. So the Levite can marry a divorced woman. The Cohen cannot. The Cohen has to have, his wife has to be a virgin, and all of these type of things. But a convert always has the restriction. They will always have a restriction that they are not 100% Jewish on some level. Now they are on another level because they're part of the nation, the family of Jews, but they don't have, like, a convert on Passover has no grandparents, no parents.
Pedigree.
He has nobody to say. You say in the in the Seder, my father and my father before me. He doesn't have, or she doesn't have, these before. And there's halachas on these things that tell you how to address it. Like in Tractate Bikurim 1:4, I believe, says that a convert should use the term avotechem as opposed to avotenu, because it is your forefathers and not necessarily our forefathers.
Oh,
So it can be, and that's where I get irritated with some of the arguments that go on, because it's an ambiguous term. So it's like saying, the word atah, or et, or better yet, the word et, right? Aleph tav. It doesn't really have a definition. So to argue it is not very, I don't know, it doesn't follow much logic. Now you can make a bunch of midrashic statements, and you could say this is what I think it is, and you could derive spiritual benefit and greatness from it. But when it comes down to, halakhic matters, I mean, halakha isn't derived from midrashim for a very good reason.
well, it's not supposed to. I hear some folks like to.
There's certainly plenty of customs, that are derived from Kabbalistic things and midrashic sources and things like that. But every time, and I guess that's my point, is is not to, like, argue with what you're saying, because in this situation, it is talking about the stranger that is there, and that's why 3 and probably more of the commentaries. My Hebrew isn't good enough to read unless I have the English with it, but at least 3 commentaries that I read talk about specifically about the non-Jewish, or the resident alien, bringing these 2 particular types of vows, but then they go on to say that they can't bring, it still has to be unblemished, and it's only for these 2 offerings, and there's just a ton of discussion that goes on around it. But in other situations, when it says ger, it is saying convert. The ger that has Passover is a convert, whether you have the term tzedek or not. The context tells you everything, and in Hebrew is that way even as you read it, right? You can't read Hebrew without knowing who it's talking about. It doesn't always say he or she or they. Sometimes it's just part of the word, and so you have to have the previous context to know even what, how to even translate it.
But isn't the ger at Passover uncircumcised? Because he says a ger may circumcise himself. So he would have to be uncircumcised.
But an uncircumcised cannot eat of the Seder.
Right. That's why it says a ger must circumcise himself. So that would imply that the ger was already uncircumcised.
Well, all gerim of Israel would be uncircumcised. The convert, when, that's part of the conversion. I mean, technically, that's the whole conversion process, is just a circumcision and mikvah. But if you go up to the Jewish people the day before Passover, 2,000 years ago, not today, but 2,000, 3,000 years ago, and said, hey, I want to eat Passover, they'd say, all right, well, here's a few of the harsh laws, here's a few of the strict laws. Now do you want? Yes. All right, we're going to circumcise you. We're going to put you in the mikveh, and then tomorrow you can eat the Seder with us. If you say, no, I don't want to circumcise, then they'll say, well, tomorrow you can watch, or I don't know what they would say, but you can't, you can't eat it.
Come back in a month. We have a second Passover. You can join us there.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Isn't that what a rabbi would say? Come back next month, kid. I'm kidding. I've never had a rabbi say that to me. Everyone says that a rabbi has to turn you away 2 times. Honestly, I've never exactly been turned away from a rabbi. They are very engaging. I've never seen that. I know everyone says it. They've been saying it to me for years. I've never had a rabbi said, "Go away, kid." No, just never had it. No,
Yeah.
Aaron, and that's why I give the Gutenich props today, because they say to the Jewish converts or non-Jews. I mean, that's big. That's huge, considering how much strife this word has caused us over the past 5-6 years. That's huge. That's big for me, anyway, because everybody else they're Jews. In the story, they were converts. And I'm like, I mean, are Jews converts? They're Gerim in Israel. I mean, it really makes I think a huge statement, because the language, it's right here. Like, is it contextual? Boom.
It's like Sneetches with stars and Sneetches without.
Here we go. It says, "Say to them, speak to Aaron and to his sons and to all the children of Israel." So he's speaking to are children of Israel, which means literally descendants from Avraham, Isaac, Jacob. If any man from the house of Israel or from the Gerim among you brings an offering to fulfill one of his vows, there is a separation there. The house of Israel and the Jewish converts. Now there's another. Now see, I'm on this now, and I haven't looked ahead. I'll get to that in a second. But there's 2 different Israels we get out of this as well. We seem to get 2 different Israels. And this, I got at Chabad.org. Thank you for posting that link and making it handy. So yeah, I really like this, because it's Aaron, I gotta ask it. Would you say you've converted? Would you say you found that key for every door in Torah?
That I have converted? No, I actually just recently reached out to some Rabbanan for me and my family to, try to get into the conversion process and to fully convert.
Have you yourself, are you a different man from Torah than you were?
Sure. Sure. I mean, I've taken on, I've like Asher Mesa would say, I would be maybe part of the covenant on some basic level, but I don't have the community. I don't have anybody for my children to marry. I don't have a place to go for, Passover. I don't. So, while it has touched my life and changed me in dramatic ways, I still am not part of the nation of Israel. And so it's just sitting on the outside looking in when I don't have to do that. And,
right.
There was a time when I thought that that was basically all that there was. And, this is like, I do agree on some level. This is where Asher, his point about, like, both sides of that, non-Jewish war, if you will, are both just keeping people away from converting. And you don't see big Rabbanan having these arguments. You see the Noahides saying that all Ger is a convert, and you have the Ger crowd saying that all Ger is not converts. And you have the big Rabbanan that could care less, because the argument has already been talked about. There's thousands of things written about it. we as non-Jews get duped a lot of times because we don't know the information, and we see rabbi or we think something, and we put a lot of stock and faith into the person because we like them, or what they're saying hits us in the right place. But when you get into the Jewish community, it's just not, it's not the same as what, it's certainly, that part of it is not the same as what I thought it was 4 or 5 years ago when I started, getting into it's probably been 7 years at this point, into Noahide, Ger stuff. That was a long answer to your quick question. Sorry.
No, that's why I was asking. Would you guys consider? Okay. Let me qualify the word that I'm using now, because I don't mean necessarily conversion necessarily by means of joining the tribe, but would you guys consider Naaman to be a convert? Naaman was he was afflicted. He went to every priest, every soothsayer, shaman, medicine man, whatever he could. Nothing could solve it. And his king said, an idolatrous king said, go to Elisha, the prophet, because he's a great man of wisdom. He'll know what to do. He'll fix you. And in doing so, he became a God-fearer. And after some wrestling with the idea, it took Naaman's. He took Naaman's prescription, did what he did, bathed in the Jordan, and comes out clean, and knew that God was real. And then he went back, and he said, before I go back, he said, look, I have to. My king is an idolater, and sometimes I have to help him bow down. Can I help him bow down to this? What do I do? That fact that he asked that, to me, would say he converted. He might not be Jewish, but where he came from is no longer in his mind. He's going to go back. I mean, he's loyal to his king. He never stopped once being loyal to this king. He was a soldier. He was an officer of his people, and loved his king. What do I do now? Because he knows he loves God, but he's got this guy he serves, this king. And Elisha says, it's okay for you to help him do that, because we know in so many words, we know where your heart is. So I would consider Naaman to be a convert in the broadest sense of the word. I wouldn't call him Jewish, and that's kind of what I meant. Have you converted, Carla? That's a moot question to ask you, because you're actually converting to Judaism. Aaron, I'll just say you're converting, or you're seeking conversion. Rosalie, would you consider yourself converted to a degree?
Yes.
What differentiates? How have you if you're not, so you're not Jewish?
No.
Obviously.
No.
What?
But I do take on the title as like a Noahide Ger. That I do take on. I'm stronger than the Noahide, but beneath the Jew, and I know my place. Could I reside in Israel as a stranger? Yes.
Yeah. But as far as the word convert, what would separate you from? What makes you think you've converted? What evidence would you present if asked? How have you converted?
Gee, when you give up the idol, a lot of the things that go along with the idolatry fade away.
All right.
Amen.
Yes, and and I've had quite a few things fade away. So, not only because of the idol and giving it up, but I used to hear voices. I don't hear voices anymore.
Really?
Yes. So when you give up your witchcraft, and because most Christianity, most of that I've seen, they're into witchcraft. They're into the wrong kind of astrology. They're into Buddhism. They're into any ism that you can get. They pick and choose what they want, but still call themselves that. Once you start doing that, then that leaves yourself open to other things. One of them being spirits if you hear them, or things if you see them. And once you get rid of all of that, it goes away. The idea of the devil being an equal with Jesus is no longer an issue. We know this. We know that the Satan comes because God wills that, God sends him. Just like, okay, with Naaman, another thing we learned today is that you respect the king because he is the king, but God put him in that position to be the king.
Oh,
And God is moving him one way or another. God will make him fall, or God will make him strong. So that one hit home pretty good today too.
that's a good perspective.
Yeah, I thought so too. And like I said, we were talking with Daniel and all this, and Daniel, the king, had the dream but couldn't remember the dream. But Daniel wanted to know. Daniel knew, but he knew that he knew. He knew certain things about it. And God's in control of everything, good and bad. So to put it in that perspective, yeah, you still have to respect the king. You don't have to follow his idols, but you still have to respect him, because when you respect him, you're also respecting God, or the bigger king, because God's pulling the strings. So that's kind of sort of how it was put.
Very nice.
See, and I wouldn't. Oh, go ahead.
No,
I was just going to say that I wouldn't disagree with, that there is a type of conversion that goes on, on some level. But I would say that in context of when we're talking about, Torah and discussions between, a Jewish convert and a non-Jew, that to say that, oh, I have converted, when you could have said, hey, I have been transformed.
mm-hmm.
We could use a different word, but you use, not you guys specifically, but the word to say that, oh, this person is also a convert is not used for the sake of clarification. It confuses people, because people are like, oh, should I convert to Judaism? And somebody's like, oh, well, didn't you accept the Noahide laws, and hasn't it changed your life? Well, then you've already converted, and you don't need to go through this whole process. And it's like, maybe they do. Had I not bumped into this stuff, me and my family would have been converted 3 or 4 years ago. But it caused massive confusion because I didn't know. And so, it's good, because it caused me to dig deep and dive hard. And I'm where I am today, and Baruch Hashem, it's his plan. But I just, when these discussions go on, I think it's important to use the proper words in the proper place, and not say, oh, I converted to Judaism because I took on being a Noahide Ger. I think it's, especially to those that are just coming into these things, I think it's important to say, use terms like, it's kind of a quasi conversion, or it's been massively transforming. And I just think that's what a lot of these, I think both groups have this war that goes on, and then there's these people in between that just get thrown off because there's a power struggle, as opposed to like a place of just saying, let's teach this person, let's teach them the laws, let's teach the rules, let's teach it without my own personal bias. And then after they've been taught, then I can tell them my own personal bias.
All the Noahide code and the Noahide Sugia, I guess, if you want to call it that. All it did was kind of, it pissed me off. It was like, honestly, it was a grain in the oyster. All it did was piss me off. I did feel incomplete. I had felt I converted at that point. I had differentiated myself already. I wasn't even aware of it. But yeah, like you were saying, I think honestly, I might have had a bit more. I had life things change, but I probably would have gone full Jewish if I wasn't told, well, there's already a plan for you. You see? And
Rabbi Smackdown. Yep.
and it was already in the mind of what I was told, and still, but I mean, my friends, rabbis who are my friends, you know, it was all about, well, whatever you do, you have to differentiate yourself from the Jew. All that's going to do, and what I found it did, and why I reject it like I do, is because then that just takes the Goyim back to making their own religion. They're not going to join Israel. They're not clinging to Israel. Oh, well, you're over there. You know what I'm saying? And it.
Yep.
And although I do not in any way disagree with the Rebbe and him saying we need to teach the world the Noahide laws, that is bare base minimum. Because if you're going to come to us, if you're going to come to Jewish people, in other words, you will have to abide by our rules. This is the rule that you have to abide by first. But people ran with it. And one of the things I like about the Ger Sugya, and this is a good look this week, is a great, and I didn't look at this last year. I don't think I looked at it any year. Is that you're there as a Ger. You know what I'm saying? There is a Ger Toshav today. It's accepted. Everybody accepts it. There is a Ger. You're all, it's a welcoming in. It's a warming feeling. I use that word. Oh man, it really, but it is. No, I can't deny that. It really is. When you read the Torah, which has been made available to the world, Baruch Hashem, and you read it, it will speak to you personally. It just does. It's going to do it. It's written that way. It's a trick. It's going to sucker you in no matter what you do. You're going to become a part of this text when you begin to study it. To say that everything about the Torah and everything that comes with it, including the nation of Israel and all its warts and all, that once you come to this great knowledge, remember that you're not one of us. You can't be one of us, and you're over there with the rest of the Goyim. The Ger Sugya, or the notion of the Ger that we haven't been thinking of, I think, is like it's in here. You're already there with them. You're not. You don't get a lot of the benefits that certain people are going to get. You're not going to get the benefits of the Holy of Holies. Sorry, never going to happen.
We're like Episcopalians. We're instead of being Roman Catholic light, we're Jew light.
Kind of. We'll never go to the Holy of Holies, no matter what we want to do. Our children are never going to go to the Holy of Holies, no matter what we do. End of story. We're not going to be priests. We're not going to get certain benefits of Sabbath ever. It's just not going to happen. That's reserved for Israel. However, man, these people, the Ger, who we keep mentioning throughout Torah, these people that are with them, who have already made up their minds, that's a much more welcoming approach. And I think Israel could benefit from a Ger Toshav perspective versus a Noahide perspective when people come to Jews, when people come to rabbis and Noahide Zaitni or Ben Noach, whatever. I think it's much better that this is a tribal thing. As much as it is personal revelation and personal, I know it's all about the personal ethical and personal ethical and personal ethical. And we get all the personal ethical stuff we can get. It's personal ethical, personal. It's not. It's never been personal. Ever, unless you're Avraham or Jacob. It's never personal. When does God ever address Israel on a personal level? If you're not Aaron or Moshe, you're in a tribe. You're in a nation. There is the children of Israel and the Gerim with them, but it's always the Gerim with them. And you rest your Ger, they can even circumcise and become part of you. He doesn't offer that to the Nochri. He doesn't offer that to the Goy. He offers that to the Ger. How do you become a Ger? Well, your friend. You're a friend of Israel. That's the thing. Whether you're a convert or just a non-Jew like Naaman who knows what's going on in the universe.
Yeah, and I just wish that they would, both sides would just say, look, this is a starting point, and this is only meant to help you get to the next place. But it ends up being an ending point, and it's like this is the end, and
people ran with it for 20 years. They're still running with it. Some of them. Yep. My goodness. Shalom, Master. I didn't see you there. Hey, welcome.
Hey, what's up,
We're
guys?
still, I'm just great, but we're at this point, man. We got Rashida Tlaib, we got Emor, and now we got
They're there for a reason. They're there for a reason.
now I'm griping about how Israel's not welcoming in, not by fault. I'm not faulting anybody here, but why I would prefer we look at the Ger Toshav as a means to sell the non-Jew. I know we can say join and be. I know where you're going, Asher. I know, but we were looking at.
You're making them stronger. That's the thing. Like you're giving them power, and like, why do you start off saying that I don't want to point any fingers or I don't? I mean, call things what they are. They got no problem calling you, like a Gentile, like saying someone from outside, right? Like not one of us. Right? There's a lot of like Judaism ran fine in terms of welcoming people in, like before there was a Noahide movement. In other words, like, could we honestly say that things are better now because of a Noahide movement or worse? I had a lot of conversation with Rod Rubin a few years ago, and he told me that in his community, the existence of his place has actually retarded conversions. Like, in other words, in order to convert, now you have to spend 1 year in his Ger, like House of Gerim or whatever, before they would even take you as a convert. So it's kind of it's made it worse. That we just have to kind of erase it, imagine that it never existed, and let's just go back to the way things were. In other words, someone was interested in becoming Jewish, fine, convert them. Well, the people haven't been converting people right away, or been doing it the right way for over 2,000 years. But at least open your doors, welcome them in, start learning with him. Not teach them 7 laws. There's no commandment anywhere that says that when someone comes to convert, you teach them 7 laws. It never says that. Okay, it's for people who probably aren't knowledgeable enough to even embrace Judaism. Like for people who live in a piece of land you're inhabiting, right? And you want to adjudicate him by a bare minimum. Like, you're not going to adjudicate him by commandments he hasn't accepted, so you're going to adjudicate him by laws that separate him from the animal. That makes perfect sense. But these guys are not your friends, or they're either not your friends or not very bright. In terms of that they're teaching you 7 Noah laws, but it's like, how can a teacher teach something to someone else and at the same time like go home and learn something else that only applies to him when we're dealing with God and religion? I mean, I thought we're all equal here. I mean, on Mount Sinai, it wasn't just Hebrews, and even the Hebrews back then also had the status of Gentiles. And in other words, they didn't have Torah. So you had the mixed multitude and people of Hebrew stock that basically behaved like Gentiles. Like, where's the favoritism here? Where's the you and I? No, we're all the same. We're all on the same. We're all as equally special as we are equally worthless. And this whole thing that I walk around, well, I'm a Jew, I have to learn Torah, and you have to try to like eke out a mere religious existence by 7 laws, and then they'll make up stuff. Oh, well, it's 7 categories of laws. Of course, it doesn't say this anywhere in the Talmud, right? It's a joke, man. It's just we have to stand up and call these things what they are. These guys are a bunch of losers. Okay, I mean, they're not. They don't care about you. You understand that? When you love somebody, when you care about somebody, you want to share the same relationship that you have with God with him. You know what I mean? But when I learn something new, I just want to run and tell people about it. Like when I save money on something, when I find out a certain trick and how to do something. Like the other day, I was changing the fuel pump in my car, and then I have a Volvo, so they're here like trying to sell you this O-ring remover special $50 tool. And you know what? I figured out how to do it with a pair of pliers and a hammer, and then I put that crap on YouTube. I have a channel on YouTube called.
Wait, you're the biker rabbi and you drive a Volvo?
Yes, I'm.
I drive a Volvo. With that.
I like luxury cars, but I like luxury cars that last. So Volvos last forever. But anyways, I have a channel on YouTube called Demo Dollar, where I demo how to do things. So when I fix a bike or when I fix something in my car, I figured out like I could use a ATF transmission fluid for power steering fluid in a Volvo. So I put that right up there. Why? Because when you find something that's true and it works for you, a decent individual wants to share that with everybody else because they want everyone else to feel this, right? And it says this, like the Rambam writes in his book of commandments, Sefer Mitzvot, on the commandment of how to love God. And you can look this up. It's a third commandment, the third positive commandment. It appears in Chabad.org. It says the way you love God is by doing what Abraham did in Haran. It says that because he became a lover of God, he wanted to make God loved by the whole world, but to the revelation that he received. In other words, it's not that he wanted to make people Noahites. He wanted to bring people where he was at, because it's telling that you only really love God to the extent that you want to spread that relationship that you have with God with others. Now, the relationship that Abraham had with God was a covenantal relationship. I mean, he wasn't making Noahites. He was bringing people into the covenant, right? So with this whole thing where that people don't preach what they practice. In other words, they do something, but they don't want to share it, right? It's new, and it's kind of like, I've always likened it to there being a sickness out there and you having the cure for the sickness. Because everyone who's read the book of Psalms, anyone knows that Torah's life, individual moral training, the Torah tells you Torah's life, you choose life. It even says, I think in Deuteronomy chapter 29, it says that whoever doesn't commit himself to keep this law shall be cursed. It's anyone who doesn't commit himself. So when you know this and the whole world is dying and you're choosing to keep the world from it, there's something wrong with you. And we have to call these people out. And we can be, well, the Rebbe's right. Screw the Rebbe. I mean, what the heck?
I think back in 1950 or 60 something, whatever, it was a great idea, but they ran.
It wasn't a great idea. Was it a good idea? He just felt that this is what he had to do because this is what his Rebbe taught him. The Rebbe didn't do anything good for anyone who wasn't born Jewish. Okay, fine. Even monsters love their kids. Racists love people like in their own race too. That doesn't make them spectacular. Okay, there's a lot of people who are head and shoulders above the Rebbe, including Mother Teresa and virtually every policeman in my neighborhood. I'm just saying, with this whole thing that people walk around saying the Rebbe's the greatest tzaddik in our generation, get the heck out of. I mean, they just repeat what other people say.
We know that's crap because we have him on the side of buses saying he's the Messiah. That should be clue one. He's not.
Yeah, right.
You shouldn't need a sign on a bus to show somebody's the Messiah after they're dead.
But he didn't deny it. Also when he was alive and they started singing Yehi, which is his little anthem for the Messiah, he let them continue singing, and he thought that his fallen was a Messiah. This whole people just repeat what other people say.
Didn't Jesus do that too?
Yes.
Didn't Jesus just basically let the woman believe what she wanted to?
Yeah. Well, it says in the Talmud that silence is agreement. So people say I'm Superman and I don't say anything. I mean, even though it's true, at least my wife calls you Superman.
I was bringing.
But anyways,
I was bringing this up because of Leviticus 22:17, and I went through my hurts and I went through the stone, and then I came to the gutnik, which shocked the tar out of me. The word they use for ger, or how they explain ger, and in the gutnik they parenthesize commentary within a translation of the Hebrew text. It's handy, but it's meddlesome too. But if any man from the house of Israel or from the Jewish converts, quotation or in parentheses, or non-Jews, brings his offering to fulfill yada yada yada. That's like the most accurate translation I think I've ever found on that, and I've skipped it. I think through last year I went to the Gutnik, and it didn't even hit me when I read it. But I know, the whole ger word. I know why you feel like you do about it. And we can debate it right now. I said I want to debate you on a Saturday, but I'll debate you right now. I think ger is a far better alternative to the unsuspecting goyim. A ger toshav would be a better step one than 7 Noahide laws, because personally, after 10 years, all the 7 laws did was piss me off. It was an adjutant in the It was an adjutant in the oyster. I might have gotten a pearl out of it, but it was a pain in the ass the whole time it was in there.
Well, the only difference is that the 7 laws don't literally appear in Torah, at least not like a code. And like the term Noahide also doesn't appear, but the term Ger appears, right? However, the only time, at least the rabbis, attribute Ger to Ger Toshav is probably around 3 times in the whole Torah. Because every other instance, as you know, they refer to a convert. That's why they believe in converts, right? Like if every time it said Ger, it meant a Gentile living amongst you, then where is there a law or some descriptive item to tell us to accept converts, right? Like if Ger doesn't also mean converts, so then we have to acknowledge that sometimes it must mean converts, or then converts can't exist. And Tanakh tells us that yes, that people attach themselves. Well, even in the Torah, like it talks about the Edomite being your brother in terms of like them being attached to you, right? Or so or the heir of Rav, like people that were from the outside coming in and being embraced. It says there's one law for the Ger and like the native born, saying that there is a naturalization process, there's an immigration process going on, right? But that doesn't mean that it's a movement of people who aren't part of the covenant and who haven't committed to keep all the laws in the Torah, because we have to acknowledge that God never makes a distinction between laws. Okay, the same God who said don't eat pork is the same God who said like don't eat a limb from from a living animal. So we can't distinguish and say, oh, there are 7 laws for Gentiles, because you're saying that God makes a distinction. He doesn't make a distinction. The distinction is rabbinic. Okay, now I'm a rabbinic Jew, but then I would have to acknowledge that that's a rabbinic ruling. It didn't come from God. Okay, in other words, if we would resurrect biblical Israel and the Palestinians were adamant in living amongst us, but not converting, then yes, the court is not going to adjudicate them by 630 they haven't accepted. So we have this idea that they at least have to behave when they're around us, so they have to keep these 7 laws. But we shouldn't tolerate people trying to build a religion out of that, because it's like Ger Ger for all intents and purposes just means docile Gentile. That's all it means. It's kind of like we're going to tolerate you in the party, okay, as long as you shut up and do what you're told and serve us, because they're our servant. Even though Jews have to secure their survival, I mean they're still there for us.
Yep.
Right. And of course, we'll put you to death if you break any of these 7 laws with 1 witness and no pre-warning. This is nothing to celebrate. This is nothing to tolerate. This is something to kind of like be ashamed of, that anyone, or be ashamed of these people, that anyone would know the truth and choose to live like an intellectual caveman. Right. Or a pervert. There's many people who just want to live by 7 laws because it gives them like a lot of freedom to drop 606 of them. You know what I mean? I mean, it's kind of like, I don't have to do crap with these 7 laws. That means I could like marry my wife's sister, which is prohibited in the Torah. I could sleep with my aunt or whatever. You understand what I'm saying? It's just like a license for debauchery. So don't feel like you have to pay tribute to the Rebbe or these rabbis. These guys have a broken moral compass. Like they don't really think that Torah is life-changing, because if they felt that Torah was life-changing and all the world needed was more Torah Jews, and they would take a freaking Gentile, stick Torah in his brain, which would change his behavior and increase Klal Yisrael. But they walk around thinking that Gentiles are intrinsically impure, which is why they don't want to. They want to keep you as far away as possible with books like the Divine Code and the World of the Ger, when you could just be studying Torah.
Would this be possibly a symptom of living amongst hostile goyim, especially when the Russians kicked them out and they came into Europe, flooded into European, and would this be a symptom of that? Now I asked this knowing
the Ger movement.
Gav
the Ger movement is less than 5 years old. Okay, the Ger movement is less than 5 years old. The Noahide movement is less movement. I'm not saying laws. The Noahide movement is less than 30 years old. Okay, and Jews have never had it better. which is why you have every Christian basically lying and saying that he's a Jew. There hasn't been a time on this planet where Jews have been so admired by the populace. I mean, heck, the Gentiles gave Jews the land of Israel. The Jews didn't earn it; they were given the land of it by vote, right? I mean, where the League of Nations voted to partition like that time Palestine into Jewish areas. The Gentile, now what a coincidence that at a time that Gentiles love Jews the most, Jews have made it even more difficult, more than ever, to let Gentiles in. It shows
That's what I was
that
going to bring
because
up.
they didn't have an evil to fight, they manufactured one.
Well, we didn't know. Gav said that it's only been about 100, maybe 110 years that we've had Shalom. Wayne, welcome. I'm glad to see you, dude. He was saying that the conversion process we know of today was invented 100 years ago. That in the 1800s, even 1700s, when that Zionism bit was just starting, you could still convert in a month's time and just be educated along the way. That's
right. I think that's right. Yeah, sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, so when I asked that, and I do have two more questions, and Wade, I'm going to ask these of you too. I'm glad I got you here because two of the big questions I'm asking tonight. One deals with Shida Tlaib because that's where really my head is at this week. We'll get to that in a second. In the broadest sense of the term, sense of the term convert, not Jew, but just convert, would you consider Naaman a convert? After dunking in the Jordan and taught, would you consider him a convert? In some degree, is there any basis that you would say, yeah, he converted, even though he had to go back and live in Goyville, basically? Would you call him could you say he converted to some degree, in your opinion? Are you there, sir? Is anybody there?
I hear you.
Okay.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what I was wondering, and this brings up the Ger thing and the whole spectrum of coming to Israel. It is, I think it's a journey, like from red to purple, from infrared to ultraviolet. You're going to go through your own. There's going to be a wilderness, and when you do join up, it's going to be I just wondered, would you consider Naaman a sort of convert? I know Rabbi Katz, who wrote The World of the Ger with Chlorphene, he says Naaman was the everyman Ger.
We have to acknowledge that we don't know much about Naaman, by the way. We don't know what the heck, I'm sure there's midrashim built on this, but we have to understand it's conjecture. I mean, he might as well. It's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine, and then I didn't verify this for myself, but he says there that where it says a ger lotone, like a ger, the ger you shouldn't mistreat in the Torah because you were gerim in Egypt. Like he said that Rashi says there that means that we shouldn't mistreat anybody who's not from your land, including Jews. In other words, like if a Jew was from Babylon or from in the land and he wasn't a native, it's just a command not to mistreat people visiting, in general, right? But anyways, in terms of Naaman, we don't know anything about him, so this is why, why is it that when you ask a rabbi who was Naaman, he's going to quote every midrash, and he's not going to tell you that it's just opinion, right? It's because I'm pretty sure the average rabbi nowadays can't tell a difference between what's written in Tanakh and what's written in a midrash. And if you ask them, is this opinion or it's not? And of course, they've stuck it in their head that every midrash was given to Mount Sinai alongside the Torah, including the Zohar, including everything. It's really a dumbification of religion that a rabbi can't make a distinction and say calmly and plainly, the text says this, but the rabbis theorize this, right? Now, why can they say that? Why can they say, it's a dumbification to say that no, all this was given him on Sinai. And of course we know like who Naaman was because the Ramchal wrote about him. It's like, idiot, the Ramchal lived 300 years ago. It's just like conjecture. This is an opinion. I have a lot of opinions too. Like about a variety of things. I don't walk around saying that, anyone should take my words from an absolute perspective. I mean, have you ever heard a rabbi make a distinction? This is just opinion. This is law. No, they lump it together because, I'm like in a bad mood today. These guys are a bunch of dummies. I mean, they're dummies.
Another big thing is a lot of times, and I've noticed this has been over the course of 20 years, the rabbis will use terminology that the unsuspecting Gentile won't know anything he's talking about. And
yeah, but they talk like this to Jews also. I mean, it's not. You'd be surprised, with the average Christian. I'm sorry, the average Christian knows Tanakh a lot better than the average Jew. Okay, and it's really. I mentioned last time on your show that there's actually two types of Judaism out there. There's Judaism that Baal Teshuvas and converts know. In other words, a Judaism that actually has to make sense in order for you to want to keep it, and a Judaism of people who were just born Jewish. And it's almost so detrimental for someone to just have to be born into a system that teaches them that everything is divinely inspired, everything the rabbi teaches is divinely inspired, instead of coming from a convert's perspective, from a Baal Teshuva's perspective. I mean, like having to learn it and only buying into the system if you decide it makes sense to you, because then you're in a better position to defend it, right? Now, like, what pisses me off is when you have people like who are converts who were initially thinking enough to want to leave Christianity and convert to Judaism and just join a brainwashed cult within Judaism, like become Chabad or Breslov, and they're like dancing around, singing around, Rabbi Nachman. I'm like, 5 years ago, like you were singing Jesus songs, now you're singing Rabbi Nachman songs. It's like you left one cult to enter another cult. All right, then you know who I'm talking about when I'm talking about Breslov. There aren't too many. What's this guy's name? The guy who bashes me also. Which I guess gives me the right to bash him too. Like the Ira, right? And now he's a Breslover Chassid. It's just kind of like, like keep it real, man. I respect Christians because I respect the whole notion of sola scriptura. Okay, at least that kept them at bay. Okay.
Yeah, and it's something we can rely on. And I think that's what Gentiles and non-Jews who come to the Torah cling to the written, is because they can depend on it. Well, no matter what opinion,
but it keeps them pure.
You've got a King James Bible in your Amish community, but when you're down there studying and someone brings up you can always go back to the book, and you can, and I never liked that I was taught when I was coming into Judaism that the written law was almost passé in thought or in the way the flavor. It was like the oral Torah was everything, and maybe they wanted to induce in young folk or new folk the idea that the oral Torah is Torah. Maybe they were wanting, but honestly, it was almost like it was passé. And then I've been accused so many times of the whole sola scriptura. And it's not that I believe in that alone, but if it says one thing and you're saying another, there is a gap that's got to be filled. We have to build a bridge, or we got to fill it, or we have to just, cut our losses and move on, because the written doesn't change.
Or consider one absolute and one either secondary, right? I mean, clearly rabbinic law is secondary to written law, right? I mean, if
you would
like the rabbinic,
I would
can't contradict the right. Well, that's how it works. I mean, that's a principle that nobody mentions. That if we have a question on how to execute a Torah command, like we're commanded to be strict on its interpretation of its execution, or like if we have a question on a rabbinic command, we're commanded to be lenient, right? So this is why you don't have too many converts to Judaism from Catholicism. Because the average Catholic can't tell you his toe from his elbow religiously, like he can't make a distinction between a book in the Bible and a chapter in the Missal, right? Like
All
the
heart.
Christian, right? Well, like, and that's what I liken, like someone who's born in the Haredi Jewish world, like versus someone from the evangelical camp, like who I liken to converts and Balchuvas, who actually, no, like it
Darn it.
has to make
I
sense to them
love-
because
We
Huh?
lost John again. John, if you're listening, get your ass back in here. I need to talk to you real quick. Come back in. Darn it. Keep going. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, I'm just saying. So it's well, the reason sola scriptura is important, like for Gentiles, is because it keeps them at bay. You know, it's that when you got a guy basically validating every apocryphal book as divinely inspired, you're never going to convert that guy to Judaism. You know, because he's developing his own religion. You know, like he's like going through the scores of pages and books and like creating a dogmatic monster, right? While someone who's limited to 66 books, right? You know, or whatever, uh, it he's going to have a more monolithic understanding of God and the oneness of God, and you know, right? This is why like
Right.
people who convert to Judaism from Christianity, they value the Bible and they value the words in the Bible. You know what I mean? You know, and it's good that well, they don't know anything about oral law because they're coming to Judaism, but like a baby. Like all they know is what the Jews knew on Mount Sinai, and it's good, right?
So
You know, huh?
let me get you. Let me get you to wrap. I'm going to get to Wade here, and hopefully, if John comes back, I'm going to get to him. But would you say, by what we have in Second Kings, that there was a conversion process with Naaman, some kind of conversion process with what we have? And I brought this up earlier. It was because he then inquired, "Well, I'm going back to Goyville, but my king worships an idol. I know better, but he's my king." And Elisha says, "Go ahead and help your king out. Of course, help him out. I know where your heart is." Wouldn't that be some kind of conversion right then and there? And
I mean, he did
find this
himself.
revelation elsewhere to people throughout the Bible, or for that matter, in the world today. And Wade, I want to pose this to you too. If you have an opinion on Naaman, I want to hear it. Asher, go. Aaron, Rosalie, I've gotten you already. Go ahead.
Well, in terms of the whole Naaman experience, I like he was told to dip because he had a skin ailment or his right. I mean,
Yeah.
right, but it I mean, I don't know. You know, I mean, like he may have been like a monotheist before then. I mean, like what was you really converting to? I mean, the whole notion of monotheism is not one reiterated in Torah. I mean, yes, you have to acknowledge the God of Israel, but it's
Why
like
would he need to inquire if he can vow to an idol that is king? Why would he need to inquire about helping his king vow if he didn't already come to the conclusion that there is only one God?
right. No, what I mean in terms of monotheism is what people war against today in terms of what's monotheistic or not. In other words, if you would have believed like in a Father, Son, Holy Ghost, but still the God of Israel, I'm pretty sure God wouldn't have considered him an idolater.
Okay.
You know, but sure, I mean the Bible like wants you to like not to acknowledge the God of Israel, but to serve him. In other words, you can't serve or worship the God of Israel without keeping his commandments. Like you just can't. You know, he doesn't want acknowledgement. He wants to be served. He wants to be worshipped. And in Hebrew, that's avodah. That means doing what he says. You know, so
Could not,
but like you said,
there was kind of a conversion then. Could you say there was?
right? It sounds like
Okay.
it. I mean, the whole notion of conversion is much later.
Perfect.
I mean, people were just absorbed in, and they're
Yeah.
like, "You want this?" I'm like, "Yeah." You know, and of course, there had to be checks and balances.
Cool.
You know, for people who were going to be living in the land, because the Sanhedrin only had the authority in the land. You know, that means a Jew could live or an Israelite could live outside of Israel and eat all the pork he wants, and the court's not going to hold him liable for it. Right? But as soon as he enters the border of Israel, you know, like he has to, you know, it's like in the TSA check, like the TSA check line, you have to drop your bottles of water and your oil of Olay or whatever because you're gonna blow up a plane.
Wait.
But oh man, I just said blow up plane on like Google. You know, I think like NSA is probably like scanning this thing now. All right, go.
Wait.
Yeah.
Shalom, brother. How you doing, sir?
Shalom, James. How are you?
I'm peachy.
I hear you.
How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good.
Well, any opinions on Naaman? or for that
Yeah,
matter, anything
yeah.
written in
Actually,
Go ahead.
yeah. I don't believe there was any conversion. Uh, I believe that Elijah, God held up to what Elijah said. Elijah uh, said, "Go and do this," and God made it so because Elijah said so. Um,
Kind of
it
like how
wasn't. It wasn't
God.
because of. It
Go ahead.
wasn't because of the Gentile. It wasn't because of trying to prove it to the Gentile. It was because Elijah, just like when the future comes, when they come and grab a hold of a Jew, a true Jew that truly knows the covenant, that's walking in the covenant with a close relationship, not like we have now, but real.
Hmm.
And when something's said over you or told to you from God, like Elijah, something's going to, I mean, when you go dip yourself in the water, things are going to happen. But we ain't there yet. Elijah had that. He had that authority.
So this is
And
kind of, so you would say this is kind of like maybe Moses bringing in the heir of Rav and God having to accept them.
it wasn't like he made him
Or
do so.
right.
He didn't tell God this is the way it was. He
Right.
just like he said when Elijah said the rain was coming, you know, it, you know, it was, he had the power over that. And for whatever reason, whatever, it was accepted. And that it was that relationship that Elijah had. And I think it was showed what relationship Elijah had. Anyone that goes into that water, and you know, if you have some disease and it's washed away from you, it's of course it's going to change you for the rest of your life. You're going to say, you know, you want to follow that God forever, but he couldn't. But the
Mhm.
thing is, it wasn't about him. It was about Elijah. It wasn't no conversion. He was blessed enough to be able to go in the water and be healed from it. He didn't do anything except believe Elijah, and he really didn't believe him the first time.
No, he did not.
So I mean, that really showed, you know, like the Christians say, faith. Well, he didn't show a whole lot of faith. So it wasn't about his works. It was about Elijah's works, about his relationship with God. My opinion, just mine.
That's great. That's brilliant. Yeah, Asher, you brought up something great. You know, we get away from the midrashim and we just go by the text alone. We do see, and it really is from an Israelite Elisha point of view. In that instance, we see a changed man. Whether he stayed changed, you know, we don't know. But in that instant, he
Mhm.
was. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? I don't know.
Right.
Any
So smart.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
There's one more thing I want to add to this. You know, I mean, someone asked me like, in a discussion I had like a few weeks ago, like, and they're like, "Oh, well," they quoted the book of Job, and they asked me, "Is Job the word of God?" And I said, "No. I mean, not necessarily. The Torah is the word of God. I mean, think about it. We know now, like, clearly, with the exception of Job, but we know like who wrote these books. You know, so I don't think that rabbis walked around through the centuries, or judges or Levites, uh, like through the centuries, acknowledging that their men, their court wrote a certain book and started calling this the word of God. You know, Jews don't call these books the word of God. Former Christians who speak English call books outside the Torah, you know, in the prophets and the writings, the word of God. I mean, it's not, you know, so we have to be careful what we take as prescriptive from those books. Okay, because there's many people who build their whole theology around what appears in the writings and the prophets. Because the Torah just tells you to keep Torah. But they're like, oh, well, we have Nam in here, so because of this, I'm adding to my dogma. I'm kind of building my relationship on how I walk with God because of an instance that may have occurred in a book that we don't know, like, if it was preserved accurately throughout the ages, because there's no way to write these books down, right? Like what the halakha tells us how to write Torah scrolls, but that a Torah scroll has to be copied from another Torah scroll, right? Then you have to compare it against two other Torah scrolls. All these books of the writings, many of the times were written from memory. Okay, so
Really?
this is why, yeah, so
Psalms and
oh, well, that for sure. Like we don't even know who wrote, Psalms, because some were written by David, and then like the vast majority of them are like anonymous poems. But nobody walked around saying these were books of God. Now the whole notion of holy books, sure,
Yeah.
holy, in other words, they're special. That's what holy means. It just means set apart. It doesn't mean like sacred, like godly inspired.
And you
It,
can't
it's it,
find two Christian translations of Bibles where they have anything in any sort of logical order either. Have you noticed this? King James,
yeah, but
New
the Torah,
International Version, the Jehovah's Witnesses Bible, like parentheses devil every other page. They never line the books up in any. There's no, it's just kind of they get the 5 books of Moses usually right. I've seen numbers come after Deuteronomy before, but I think I did. No, that was something else.
yeah.
But you know what I'm
Here,
saying.
like when studying the writings or trying to come up with any new progressive theological ideas in the writings, we always have to ask ourselves,
Open
would
up.
I have come to this conclusion if I only read the Torah alone? Okay. And if your answer is no, right, that this is clearly a new idea, I'm not saying it's a wrong idea, but you have to acknowledge that this idea is not something built on stone. It's built on sand, it's built on a devotional understanding, no matter who's teaching it, right? Because it's pulling you away from what God instructed in the Torah. God only gives one standard in the Torah, standard in terms of what to do to please him. Do this, don't eat pork because it's an abomination. It's a toeva to him. The same God who says don't eat pork is the same God who says, like don't mix don't mix wool and linen, like
Mhm.
linen. So when someone enters the Jewish world from the non-Jewish world and they see themselves believing something that is not that doesn't have its core in the 5 books of Moses, that's not there, then they pretty much adopted a different religion. Okay, it's a Torah. It's a Torah that personifies our religious existence, not any other book, not a rabbi. This is what I tell Noahides, that they've dropped one middleman, i.e., Jesus, for another middleman, i.e., the rabbi. And I believe in rabbis, but when they're doing the right thing, okay, not when they're putting a stumbling block between you and Torah, because as a Christian, you identified with the Israelites in Scripture, right? Every promise, every word that God spoke to the Hebrews, you thought He was talking to you too, but suddenly you've changed the way you think, right? I mean, it's no longer, you know, like you're no longer part of that multitude. You're outside now, like like eating from the scraps. When before, like you were eating like from the table. You know what I mean? And it's just like it's kind of like Christians should know better, right? Because like you just went from a higher state of holiness to a lower state, and the rabbi who you thought was your friend is like maybe unconsciously a bigot. Unconsciously, I mean, he's just so used to viewing you as a Gentile as inferior to him that
Or
that
trouble, or just trouble.
right.
Trouble.
Sure.
Really about it. It's not even inferior.
Asher,
Yeah.
I just want to say, yeah, you nailed it. That's exact. And I'm going to tell you for just like yourself, and I guess everybody else here that's been ex-Christians, that is when you realize that, you go, uh-oh. Yeah, that's when you find that you're not it anymore, and you're the dog instead of somebody sitting at the table. That was a sucky day. Yeah, just to be honest. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to take a second and agree with you on that because that was that was something.
I'm telling you, here, look, like my biggest haters are Noahides. Why? Because I understand that they begin to sympathize with their oppressors. They're like, I mean, really, the vast majority of people who've left Christianity, well, haven't left Christianity because Judaism to them makes more sense. It's because they've romanticized the Jew to such an unhealthy level that they even denied their God for it. I mean, that's what it is, because these guys will die for Jews in Israel, even though Jews in Israel haven't done anything for them, right? I'm just saying, I mean, I'm calling it like I see it, okay? Because someone who's really after the truth from the beginning said, I'm not going to let you. I mean, I just dropped, like the God I used to pray to and rely on and thought was closer than a brother to come closer to the truth. And now I have to deal with you, Mr. Rabbi. No, I'm going straight to God. I'm not going to put up with you. I had to become a bad Christian in order to try to become a good Jew or a good servant of God, right? And I don't see these Noahides like having the testicular fortitude, like to stand up to these rabbis and say, you know what, you're a
Well,
bad shepherd.
they wouldn't know a bad shepherd because they've been led by hellfire and damnation and original sin and Satan. They don't know fucking any difference. I appreciate any Judaism that a rabbi is willing to give the world. It's going to lead them there anyway. Like I said, even the Noahide law for so many people who aren't satisfied, and that's the other thing is that's a whole other topic about being satisfied with the scripts.
Life is short, man. I mean, think about it. I mean, how much time, like, you invested in something that, you know what, if perhaps like, you would have took the red pill instead of the blue pill. No, but you took the blue pill. So you're like, better now, but don't burn that bridge. Help others across and say, you know what, only because I suffered, you don't have to suffer. And at least my suffering is enough, to make it easier for everybody else. But Noids are like, oh, you know what? I was annoyed for 10 years and now I converted. And who do you think you are to just convert in a year? You're going to suffer just like I suffered. This is like the crappy mentality of people.
Yeah,
All
that's a
right, so you
Well,
have to be Jesus to other people.
mentality. Go ahead, Wade.
well, I know he's Rabbi Asher. He's all about going to Judaism. I found a covenant without Judaism, but that's a different topic. But I always believe that people are at different places in their life, and everybody's going to do what's best for them. If it's Noahide, if it's whatever, if it's staying in Christianity or whatever. I think being start off with being a moral man and do the best you can. But uh, anyway,
Let me ask you this, Wade, and because we got a few minutes left on the live portion, and I'm going to pass this over to Asher, Rosalie, Aaron, and I were talking about this. John and I had discussed this a bit even before the hangout started, but I am a little concerned. And now Aaron gave a great take that we might not have to be worried about the younger generation. However, I am a worrier. I'm like my mother. I'm a worrier. So I worry about this younger generation and what they hear. And what people hear, what people are fed by people like our very own All-American Rashida Tlaib and her, double downing on Seth Meyers and all the praise and defense she's getting, boldly, blatantly lying to you. What's y'all's take on this? And as patriots, as this is it's you're killing two birds with one stone here. Not good birds. You're killing the doves. You're not.
According to the Quran, it's okay to lie to infidels.
yep. According to the Catholic, it's okay to lie to infidels too.
Seriously?
It's as long as you're protecting their religion. Yeah, it's okay to lie.
Yeah. Here's to the Jews and Torah, right? Thank you. We're not going to lie or bear false witness.
Well,
Anyway.
well, I mean, just to play whatever devil's advocate of With the average Jew, I'm not saying this is the actual law. All right, yeah, it might be. I mean, I never really researched it. But the average understanding is that that you lie to a Gentile too. Uh, I'm sure you've heard the notion whether you could speak lashon hora about a Gentile, correct?
I did not. No.
So just ask about it, because this is a typical understanding. Where there's many people that when they speak lashon hora about me online, they'll be like, "Well, I don't acknowledge him as a Jew, so it doesn't apply."
Oh,
So
you self-identify him not. You self-identify him not to be.
So the understanding is that lashon hora. Now, this is the statement that lashon hora doesn't apply towards a Russia, right? And all Rashayim, like a wicked person, are considered, or all Gentiles are considered like wicked persons. So you're allowed to speak lashon hora on a Gentile. This is a understanding of the people who follow the Chafetz Chaim's understanding of what lashon hora is or isn't. Just ask around. Don't take my word for it. Just type in online, speaking lashon hora on Gentiles, right? Evil speech, right? That would also include lying about someone, or even, because some people say that you're allowed to steal from a Gentile. The way it's formulated is that you're not obligated to return a lost object to them, which is the same crap as stealing. All right, I'm just saying. I mean, let's call things how they are.
But a Gentile also means idolater.
Correct.
To Israel.
Well, okay. So you're talking about 99.9% of Gentiles from a Jewish perspective, right? Because Christians, at least nowadays, are considered idolaters by the vast majority of Orthodox Jews, right? And whatever, it's confusing, regarding Muslims, but
but to those, okay, let's just go. Let's just be positive and say our Judeo-Christian nation. I hate that word, but sometimes you have to use it. Judeo-Christian. I can't stand it, but on this instance, I'm going to have to. On the Judeo-Christian foundation, that lying is a sin and bearing false witness is a sin, because they plaster these 10 commandments everywhere. They might not follow them to the letter, but okay, so they believe it. They believe that being lied to and bearing false witness is a cardinal sin, as they would call it in Christianity. So, what do we do with the people who would believe what's being fed to them? That's what I want to do. I want to give people something. I want to give them good arms. I want to give them the means to bring arms and knowledge, and to bring ammunition of knowledge to the rest of the people. I think that this could quite possibly go the other way. I believe in the end, things are going to wind up in God's hands, and that we will turn to Zion. I do believe that. It's my own personal belief. I don't care. So I think God's going to win in the end. But in the meantime, I want to reduce the amount of strife that we can possibly undergo in the build up to this great utopian thing, whatever. What do we say to people as Americans first, but as Noahide or Jewish or Garish, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Well, I'd like to get everybody's opinion on any ammunition or anything you could possibly give to the viewer who might, because I share this with my family too, my Christian family too. So I'll shut up, and whoever wants to take it, go. And thank you.
if nobody wants it, I'll take it.
Take it, Asher. Go for it.
All right. Gratitude, right? There's two things you need in life: attitude and gratitude, right? And I think nowadays, the one thing that the Jewish person has to remind the Judeo-Christian world, right? I know you don't like that term, is to know where our ethics and our values come from, right? Because nowadays we are standing on the shoulders of giants. We are walking down the path that was paved by our forefathers, right? So it's hard to relate that God gave these commandments to us, and this is why we keep them. No, we keep them because we were born into a society that at least when I was born, held these truths to be self-evident, right? So the only thing a decent man, or the most important thing a decent man can do nowadays, is pay tribute, which is another word of don't lose sight of where ethics come from. and that's the Torah. Even for a Christian would have to acknowledge that the only thing the New Testament brought to the table was narrative, right? Narrative, ceremony, but the meat, the ethics, don't favor a poor man in judgment, be holy as I am holy, justice you shall pursue. All of these wonderful principles are found in Torah. We have to pay tribute to that, and to touch on a little bit on what Wade said, that that he's striving to be an ethical man, right? In terms of worshiping God, right? I'm not saying you have to convert to Judaism or any of that, but what you have to do is keep his commandments to your best ability. Even if you were a Karaite, right? And you thought that keeping God's commandments is the way I interpret it, doesn't matter. Your job is to emulate a good God, right? He's good. I mean, that's what makes him special, because he by emulating him, that we could improve this planet. He's merciful, we should be merciful. He's just, we should be just. All right. So in order for anyone to have a relationship with God, you just have to do what he says. And he doesn't want us to pick and choose, right? So be grateful and accept individual moral training from Torah. That's it. It's there's nothing more in terms of joining a Jewish community that just benefits your family, right? I mean, which is a big part of it, right? I mean, walking with God doesn't mean much if you're walking alone, right? You have to find a spouse for your kid to marry. You have to have friends for your wife to speak to, right? You have to have friends to drink beer with in the weekends, right? So, but we should walk with like-minded individuals, because repairing this world is a team effort. We have to start these little, like ethical social clubs, and that's what Judaism ultimately is. It's a big ass ethical social club that people are trying to exclude people from. And that's where ethical people stand up and say, you know what, you're not going to open your doors to everyone. You should lose your 501c3 status, right? You don't deserve to exist and misrepresent our religion. So F them and F all of you. No, I'm kidding. F them.
No.
And yeah,
the
it's
rest
true.
of you in a good way.
Right. That's all I got to say about that.
Anybody else want to chime in on Rashida? Because I'm probably gonna say something myself before.
I will off air.
Oh, you will off air.
So I would add to to this, that being logical and rational with people, whether they're religious or not, and just explaining, like Asher was saying, where some of these values and morals come from, and how the degradation of these is not, pulling all these things out is causing much. We're sliding backwards instead of moving forward. And even though we had things like the killing of Native Americans and slavery and all these horrible things that led us to this point, now that we've pulled that out, we're not moving forward further. We're following back. So if we could just put that, put God back in and leave, however that may be, whether you believe in God or don't believe in God, if we can put that back into society as its core, this is where we get our principles from, I think then, logically, you can make the argument outside of even having used the religious context.
Roger that. Wade, go for it. Any response you want to give to our illustrious representative?
I believe our future is just like it's always been. It's always been a small group of people that are seeking truth, wanting to know God. And even though as the world turns, and as crazy as they may be in our governments and everything else, people are always going to seek after God and want to know his truth. Always. It may not be your son, it may not be your daughter that you think you raised the best you could so you could see them not follow, but that's not always the case. But, people will find God. They will always seek after God. And I I found exactly what Asher said about following Torah. That is my heart. Uh, and it may move forward in something else, maybe in Judaism, but not, I don't see it yet. So, yeah, that's about it.
All right. Rashida Tlaib. If you're watching this, I'm going to give you a few things you might want to look at. One, the full interview that she was giving on radio and what she says. A lot of the strife in the world has come about by trying to establish a homeworld for the Jews. She's playing the victim. I suggest you look up two basic sources. The full interview of what she said, and then you need to look up the Mandate for Palestine, 1922. Mandate for Palestine, 1922, League of Nations.
Balfour Declaration.
Balfour, that wasn't legal. That was that's great. No, it's great. It's good. That was good. That was. I'm not knocking the Balfour, but we're just going to go with treaties and legalities and straightforward black and white. This is what's going on. The Mandate for Palestine, 1922, and then you want to look at the White Paper of 1939. You're going to fill in the blanks, because having those two, I'm giving you two fulcrums that are literally censored from, I'd say, about 60 to 70% of the media out there that speaks in relation to the past 100 years and the history of what's going on there and why it's going on. Okay. You're not, those two things. I've never seen it so blatant. This is a wounded animal lashing out. You ever hear of the horseshoe effect? Like, they'll see the two extremes of politics. They'll show a horseshoe, and on one foot they put a Nazi symbol, and the other one they put the hammer and sickle symbol. And they see right in the middle of that, where they touch, is anti-Semitism. You're going to find that's true, because on the far end of that horseshoe, because you put it up where but on the far end of that, you're going to find freedom, you're going to find liberty, you're going to find reason, you're going to find science, you're going to find enlightenment. You're going to find people who align themselves with Jews. End of story. That's the bottom line. That's the river that divides, and it's always going to work out like that. Historically, I'm telling you. Mandate for Palestine, one more time. Mandate for Palestine, 1922. League of Nations, Google that, and then White Paper of 1939. Read that. You will understand exactly what we're trying to get about. I think the rest, any intelligent person who knows how to use the web, Google is your friend, Bing is your friend, Tor browser is your friend. Go there, learn. Those two things, though, will create a connect the dots. I'm giving you the finish and the end of the maze. It's all there. If you like the discussion you hear tonight, you want to join in on the discussion like these and many more. Sometimes it's standing room only. Sometimes we have plenty of room, like right now. We're going into the afterglow. Go to the Orphans of Avraham at Facebook. There's always an Orphans of Avraham official room open on Hangouts. And you can, of course, email me at jamestheidolsmasher@gmail.com. On behalf of Wade, Rosalie, Aaron, Yochanan, brother, where art thou? And Asher Meza and everybody, shalom. Thanks for tuning in. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.